Hey there, ready to dive into a classic with a side of creepy.
It's a fascinating choice, you know.
Today's deep dive is taking us into the chilling world of 1978's Invasion of the Body Snatchers.
This isn't your typical alien invasion flick with flashy spaceships and laser beams.
You've sent over some fascinating bits and pieces about it, and I can't wait to dig in and uncover what makes this film tick.
A lot of your sources pointed out that this film gets under your skin with suspense and psychological tension.
Okay, so set the scene for us. What's the basic premise that's got everyone so spooked?
Imagine this. San Francisco, a place known for its vibrancy and free spirit, is being silently overtaken by alien duplicates.
Okay, yeah, that's giving me chills already.
And not the friendly, take me to your leader kind.
Just the idea of someone, something, taking over your life while you're most vulnerable.
These duplicates replace people while they sleep, absorbing their memories, their appearance, everything, except their emotions.
It's the kind of thing that makes you want to sleep with one eye open.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's what's so brilliant about the film.
One of your sources even called it a frantic fear of the other.
It taps into this primal fear of losing control, of losing ourselves.
It makes you wonder, in a world of constant connection and social media, are we even more susceptible to that fear of losing our individuality today?
Your sources were spot on in highlighting the film's effectiveness in building that sense of creeping dread.
You know, one of your sources mentioned a specific detail that really stuck with me. The iconic line, "They get you while you're sleeping."
It's not about cheap jump scares.
Right.
It's the unsettling feeling that something is deeply, fundamentally wrong.
I mean, talk about nightmare fuel, right?
That line alone perfectly captures the chilling premise of the film.
It makes the everyday act of falling asleep terrifying.
It's so simple, yet so effective.
And it speaks to a larger theme that runs throughout the film and really resonated with your sources, this idea of losing your humanity.
The duplicates aren't grotesque monsters. They're these empty, emotionless shells.
And that's what makes them truly unnerving.
It's like looking into a mirror and seeing a stranger staring back at you.
Yeah.
You know, one of your sources brought up a really interesting point about how the film uses the very act of falling asleep, something we do every day, and twist it into a source of terror.
It's so true.
It's like this underlying anxiety that we're all vulnerable in those moments when we should be most at peace.
You're completely at the mercy of whatever's out there.
Right.
And in this film, what's out there wants to steal your very essence. It makes you think twice about who you can trust, even the people closest to you.
Speaking of which, you mentioned earlier that we need to talk about the two central characters played by Donald Sutherland and Brooke Adams.
Right.
What makes their experience in all of this so compelling?
Well, what's really interesting is that they're not your typical heroes. They're not cops or government agents with guns blazing. They're Department of Health workers, everyday people who find themselves thrust into this extraordinary, terrifying situation. And if I'm remembering correctly, one of your sources specifically mentioned Donald Sutherland's secure warmness as something they enjoyed seeing in this kind of role.
Yes, they love seeing him navigate this heart-pounding scenario. It sounds like you might be discovering a newfound appreciation for his work, too.
Maybe. There's something captivating about watching someone remain so steadfast in the face of such overwhelming fear. But speaking of fear, we've talked about how the film builds suspense and dread, but you mentioned earlier that it doesn't rely on jump scares.
Right.
So how does it actually make these duplicates so unsettling? What is it about them that makes them so creepy?
It's all about what they lack. Imagine someone who looks exactly like someone you love, sounds exactly like them, but their eyes are vacant, their voice is flat, there's no spark, no warmth, no empathy. One of your sources described them as drone-like shadows of who they once were, which I thought was such a chillingly accurate description.
Okay, now I understand why one source said this film holds up incredibly well and is way scarier than I remembered. It gets under your skin in a way that's much more insidious than just a quick jolt of fear.
Precisely. It's a slow burn, a creepy realization that something is deeply existentially wrong. And speaking of effective storytelling, we have to talk about that ending.
Oh, yes. The ending. Multiple sources called it one of the most shocking and effective endings in horror cinema, but nobody wanted to spoil it.
Right.
So without giving anything away for our listener, what is it about the ending that leaves such a lasting impression?
But let's just say it doesn't tie everything up in a neat little bow. If anything, it throws gasoline on the fire of paranoia and fear that's been building throughout the film. It takes all those anxieties about conformity, about losing your identity, and throws them back in your face. It's the kind of ending that stays with you long after the credits roll, prompting you to question everything you thought you knew.
And it sounds like it sparked a lot of different interpretations over the years. One source suggested it reflects a post-Vietnam War paranoia and distrust, particularly in American institutions.
Right. And that's a hallmark of truly great science fiction, wouldn't you say? It takes these fantastical scenarios like alien invaders
Yeah.
and uses them to hold a mirror up to our own world and our anxieties.
Absolutely. It makes you wonder, is the real threat something extraterrestrial, or is it something closer to home, something within ourselves that we should be more afraid of? The film seems to be tapping into these deeper anxieties about conformity and the pressure to fit in fears that were very real in the 70s and continue to resonate today.
What's fascinating is that several sources pointed out how this film could be remade every few years with a slightly different spin and still feel incredibly relevant. The fears it taps into losing our identity, becoming emotionless drones in a sea of faces, they feel even more potent in today's world of social media data mining and political polarization. It makes you wonder.
It really does. If Invasion of the Body Snatchers was a reflection of its time, what does it say about our time that it still feels so relevant, so unsettling?
It's a chilling thought, but perhaps a necessary one. And it goes back to what we were discussing earlier about the film's lasting impact. It's not just a sci-fi thriller. It's a film that stays with you, prompting you to think critically about the world around us and the choices we make.
Yeah.
It asks us to consider what truly defines us, what makes us human, and what we're willing to fight for to hold on to that.
It's a lot to unpack, that's for sure. But that's what we do here on Deep Dive. We take these fascinating threads of information, these intriguing questions, and we try to unravel them together. So as we surface from this deep dive into Invasion of the Body Snatchers, what would you say is the one thing you hope our listener takes away from this conversation?
You know, beyond the chills and the thrills, beyond the iconic lines and unforgettable imagery, I think the most important takeaway is this. Don't take your humanity for granted. Cherish your individuality, your capacity for empathy, your ability to connect with others on a genuine level, because those are the very things that make us human, and those are the things that are most worth fighting for.
It's a powerful message and one that feels particularly resonant after exploring the world of Invasion of the Body Snatchers. It makes you wonder, if you woke up tomorrow and something felt just a little bit off, would you even know the difference?
That's the question the film leaves us with, isn't it?
Yeah,
And it's a question worth pondering.
it certainly is. Well, thanks for joining me on this deep dive. It's been a thought-provoking journey into a classic film that continues to resonate decades later. Until next time, sleep tight and maybe keep one eye open tonight, just in case.